Chelsea going so well in the Premier League. Many think that this young Chelsea team will go all the way and win the thing. What with Manchester City faltering and maybe Liverpool catchable. So we'll see in the fullness of time. But certainly Chelsea hitting the headlines this morning in what is a developing story pertaining to one of their players in particular. The Ukrainian Mykhailo Mudryk has been provisionally suspended from football after being notified of a positive drugs test by the FA. The Chelsea winger joined from Shakhtar Donetsk last year in a huge deal worth up to £89 million. Arsenal were after the player. He ended up at Chelsea, and Chelsea paid top dollar. The player himself signed an 8.5-year deal. But now, in view of this story, Mudryk is understood to be citing contamination and denies deliberately taking any banned substance. He had a test in August that was clear, but a subsequent test returned a positive result for the banned substance. Mudryk is still waiting for the result of the B sample and is expected to make a statement today. Well, in the last few moments since we came on air, both Chelsea and Mudryk have opened up in it. Chelsea in the last few moments say they can confirm the FA recently contacted our player Mykhailo Mudryk concerning an adverse finding in a routine urine test. Both the club and Mudryk fully support the FA's testing programme, and all our players, say Chelsea, including Mykhailo Mudryk, are regularly tested. Mykhailo Mudryk has confirmed categorically that he has never knowingly used any banned substances. Both Mudryk and the club will now work with the relevant authorities to establish what has caused this adverse finding. And in the last few moments, as I said, Mudryk himself has spoken. He says, I can confirm that I've been notified that a sample I provided to the FA contained a banned substance. This has come as a complete shock, as I have never knowingly used any banned substances or broken any rules. And I'm working closely with my team to investigate how this could have happened. So, look, Simon, where do we go from here, do you think?
Well, look, the bottom line is the testing regime is UKAD. So the FA are under the same auspices of all the other sports in the UK, which is UK anti-doping. They operate a policy of strict liability, which ultimately means we've seen this conversation has been in this studio so many times with Conor Benn. Strict liability means it doesn't matter how it got in your system, you have to account for it, you have to own it, you have to explain specifically and explicitly how it manifested itself in your system, and then you might be able to reduce a ban. Strict liability means it's in your body, you're guilty, that's the end of the discussion. The best case scenario is you walk yourself backwards from a 4-year ban. Yeah. There is also strict significant briefing within the confines of football club about taking supplements. The key component part of what this boy has said via his statement via his lawyers is never knowingly taken, because he's then positioning himself, because they know where they've already told you now, they know what this is. It's a contaminated substance. Right. So we're now moving into the arguments about contamination, because once upon a time it was the contamination of the testing. They haven't found much success in being able to argue against the testing regimes, because VADA, UKAD, WADA, all the testing bodies operate at a high level. So now they're moving into the territory of it's a contamination of the supplements, which means the supplement companies are on the hook for some form of liability in this. But the players themselves are very clearly told about taking supplements. They're advised to be very, very careful about what supplements they're taking. So we're now in a territory, if this B sample, which I would imagine it does, stands up to be the same as the A sample, he's in the same territory as Conor Benn was in boxing. And we've just seen what's happened there. The strict liability policy seems to have been able to be ridden roughshod over. So now it becomes about whether the player and Chelsea are going to have a fight about whether the contamination that they allude to is a fair reason for strict liability to be imposed. He's failed. It's not an adverse finding. He's failed a drugs test. Right. The language that he uses is very politically correct. An adverse finding means a failed drugs test. Yeah. If the now the key component part that we also need to understand is what is the substance. Because ultimately, if we don't know what the substance is, it could be something very innocent. It could be using something like he's got asthma and he's using a particular inhaler from another country, and ultimately he's misunderstood the guidance in this country. It might be something like that. But he knows what it is because he's already told you he knows what it is. Of course. So they've already been investigating it, looking at it, and now they're going to position themselves as a legal framework, because if UKAD are doing their job, and the debate is whether they'll do their job, this player will get banned.
Yeah, and as you rightly say, strict liability means the onus is very much
on the athlete,
on the player himself. Strict liability,
it's all on the player.
The FA say themselves, as a player, you are solely responsible for any banned substance you use or that is found in your system, regardless of how it got there, whether it was an intention to cheat or not. And in broad headlines in the FA's ruling on this, remember it's your body, your responsibility, and your career. So that is a very strong guideline. Mudryk himself is saying, I know that I have not done anything wrong and remain hopeful that I'll be back on the pitch soon. I cannot say any more now due to the confidentiality of the process, but I will as soon as I can.
But tragically, and again, we're leaping ahead of ourselves, but let's just make this leap for the purpose of conversation, be happy to row back upon it.
Yeah.
If the B sample comes back the same as the A sample, whether you know what you've taken, your obligation and clear responsibility is to manage what, and we heard this from Pogba. Pogba talked about, when I was in America, I took supplements. I shouldn't have taken these supplements, and subsequently they are the reasons. He will have done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, whether you agree with the principles of strict liability, whether you think it's fair, whether some 22-year-old kid, 23-year-old kid isn't, conversant with certain aspects, the players will have been told. They will have understood whether they've paid any attention to it, whether they think it's important, and whether they think I'm not actually taking anything to cheat. I've misread the label or I've misunderstood. He is now caught by strict liability, and to all intents and purposes, that's the end of it. If the B sample comes back with the same testing, that is the end of it. Now, whether UKAD have got the teeth. Well, we've seen that. Despite the protestations of all the other people, and I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, the confidentiality argument around Conor Benn is nonsense, because Conor Benn can release the findings, and he can allow UKAD to release the findings so we can find out how he wasn't banned.
Yeah.
But strict liability should mean, and does mean, it's in your system, you're banned. What you might be able to walk yourself backwards from is a 4-year ban to a 2-year ban.
All right.
But you're banned.
Okay. So Mudryk and his people have a lot to do, and Chelsea, of course, fully supporting their player through this process. Simon, I think it's now being reported we know what the actual banned substance was.
Yeah, meldonium, which is apparently the same substance that Maria Sharapova got herself banned for.
Right.
Which deals with ischemic issues, that deals with blood supply, and is only manufactured in the Baltics and in Latvia. So it's a substance that has had history previously and has obviously been banned as a substance. Hence the reasons why it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So there it is. That's the substance, and it is used and has been used by athletes in the past. Sharapova used it apparently because she had a magnesium deficiency, but she got herself banned as a result of it. So it has, this drug has form and has athletes in the other sports that have had consequences attached to them as a result of it.
And just as you say that, Simon, the media outlet Tribuna over in Ukraine, who reported that Mudryk had tested positive for this banned substance, they are reporting exactly that. So you're ahead of them. That is what's being reported over in Ukraine, that is indeed the banned substance about which we are talking. No doubt more on that throughout the morning and into the afternoon. Bulletins at the top of every hour for the latest on Mykhailo Mudryk as he fights to prove his innocence in this matter.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.